Hey, welcome to Guerrilla Discipleship. I'm Tim. This is my brother-in-law, David, who's also a pastor. We're excited to continue to go over barriers that keep us from making disciples or barriers from disciple making. We've done this 3 weeks now. We've had an awesome time. We're on week 4. Hopefully you're getting something out of it. We really want to encourage you to go and make disciples, like Jesus says in Matthew 28, not only baptizing them, but teach them to obey everything Jesus has commanded, knowing that the Holy Spirit will be with you wherever you go. That's my quick translation of the end of Matthew 28. But we realize that many of us have these barriers. We say, I would be a disciple if, or I would follow if, or I would be spiritually obvious if. And so we want to address the barriers that get in the way, and we want to name them, say that acknowledge their existence, and then hopefully help you get around them, get over them, get under them, whatever it takes to get through them, to kind of knock them over, to go on the journey God's calling you and inviting you. And that's what Guerrilla Discipleship, or at least part of what Guerrilla Discipleship is all about. So today we're going to bring up a new one, barrier 4. We're calling it, the phrase we're using is, we won't make room for others. So we won't make room for others. That's a barrier why we don't make disciples. And so let us kind of hash this out a little bit, unpack it a little bit. I think it's the idea that I don't know how to exactly phrase it. I have all these notes in front of me, but I'm not exactly sure how to phrase it. This idea that, like, we know there's a need. We know we need to invite people into our lives. We know we need to walk alongside them or have a relationship with them or be friendly with them. But it's like this idea that I've kind of put 2 things on it, and I'll let David unpack it and talk more. It's the idea that maybe we won't make room for others, or we like to use the word hospitable. And I think it can be many different reasons. I think one of the reasons could be we're just at max capacity. We have a large family, or we have a family or friends that are high demand, or we have a lot of friends, or maybe we just don't have a high relational bandwidth for other people. We have 2, maybe 3 close friends, if that. And so we just like, I don't have the room in my life fit. I don't have the room in my home. I don't have the room in my heart or my mind to think or care about other people. That's kind of dangerous to say that. Or maybe you just don't feel like you know anyone to connect with, or you just don't know if you could create room, or maybe you've been burnt and you don't want to make room. The other thing I wrote down is that maybe we feel like we have relational inadequacies. And so since we feel like we're relationally deficient or not as relationally proficient as we should be, that we end up saying, I'm just not going to create room for anyone because I don't want to mess up or make it wrong. So David, do you want to jump on one of those or add more to why we won't make room for others, or unpack what I said?
Yeah, let's jump in. Yeah, I think one thing I keep coming back to that y'all have probably picked up on is I think it is helpful to kind of analyze our culture and then hold it up alongside the culture of the kingdom and see where the differences are. And, just keep plugging this through the grid of Romans 12:1. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Actually, I think that's Romans 12:2, but whatever. One of those. And, this is another one that I think you can really find a lot of fruitful insights of looking at what's happening in our cultural moment that's kind of shaping us to have, let's say, just a lot of relational deficiencies or barriers to people. And then what can we glean from the ways of the kingdom, the ways of Jesus, to offset that and make us into people that are much more open, right? So I just think about, let's just think about the lifestyle and the aspects of our culture today. If we're thinking of it from where we are, our context, for one thing, our technology tends to isolate us. We're very connected, but we're very isolated. It creates these relationships that tend to be a little bit superficial. Got a ton of friends and followers, but not a lot of true relationships. Culturally, we're in a real, polarized, incendiary, divisive kind of moment, right? And let's talk about coming through COVID and, all the messages and narratives we're receiving from whatever our news outlets are, or whatever the social media algorithms are, tend to create a lot of fear, a lot of like us versus them, a lot of barriers. And I think that it even, it creates a false sense of divisiveness, even that's making us even more divided than we actually are. Just creates a lot of like fear of, man, I don't want to step into those cultural landmines, so if that's what we're feeding on and what's shaping us, it's going to be one more barrier to being open to anybody. Be like, I don't have time to deal with that. Why would I want to get into that? So, it's definitely fueling a protectiveness, a self-protectiveness, a bit of fear, whether it's conscious or subconscious. So
self-preservation, definitely. I think you're onto something. It's like self-preservation. Like I might get burnt, I might get hurt, I might get overwhelmed or stretched too thin. I definitely think those are pieces to it all. And I want to go back and maybe I hope I defined this well. Talk a little bit about room. David and I, when we were talking about this before we talked, the talk before the talk, we talked about room kind of in two ways. Many of us will say, "Oh, my house is always open," and so maybe we're willing. This isn't very common, but maybe you are or we are willing to invite people over or have people alongside of us. But maybe we're not willing to have like spiritual or emotional room to pray with or for someone. Yeah. And I think it needs to be both, not either or maybe we're like, well, I'll pray for my coworker and I'll be, I have room and they have room in my heart. And that's a form of hospitality. I guess we can get into that, but I don't know if I have room to invite them alongside my life. And I really think that, that real discipleship, I wrote this down. I want to say real discipleship doesn't take place without real friendship. If you really want to disciple someone, if you really want to encourage them and help them on their walk, real discipleship doesn't take place without real friendship. And so we need to have some sort of friendship. And so what I want to say, one thing we're not saying is, I don't think David would tell you either, that we're not encouraging to go and create and or necessarily have more friends, but maybe to be more intentional with the friends we do have. For other people who are in high extrovert like myself, go ahead, get more friends, right? Go and have I call it the shotgun approach and just be friendly with everyone and see what sticks. Yeah. But for some of us, that's maybe not the best. And for most of us, maybe that's not the best answer. But what does it look like to create more room and be more intentional with the people you do have? And so, David, do you want to talk a little bit about the personality differences between you and me?
I was gonna. And what this looks like. I like that you said that. We were talking before, and we talked through just now the cultural aspects and lifestyle aspects, but there's also personality aspects. And so you and I are a good case study because you're a very high extrovert and I'm a pretty strong introvert. I'm very relational, but I'm very introverted. So I sometimes need my space. I need a little space to recharge. I'm in a cottage right now at Camp Hebron for a couple of days to get a personal retreat. I'm that kind of person. So, whoever's listening to this, you may fall somewhere on that spectrum of really extroverted. You need to be around people to be energized. You might be really introverted. You need your space to be energized. You can still create an openness in your life. Tim being extrovert, he's more of a shotgun approach. He's just open to anybody and everybody walking down the street, getting on the elevator. He's going to say hi to everybody. I've had to kind of learn to come out of my shell a little bit, but I have more of a sniper approach where I'll see that one person. I'll feel the spirit nudging me to just reach out to that person and establish a connection and see where that goes. But wherever you fall on the kind of personality spectrum, you can make space for people in your life, in your heart, as well as your physical space. It might mean opening up your home. It might mean encouraging them to go and get coffee or share a meal outside of your house. Sharing meals is such a powerful thing. Well, I guess we'll get into that with the solutions. But it might mean just somebody you already rub shoulders with constantly as a friend or a coworker or a neighbor, but you've only allowed that relationship to be surface level. And you need to just nudge it into something a little deeper and open up into, hey, what's actually going on in their life? Are there some struggles?
I think most of our conversations with most of our friendships or any relationship is we have like these blocks that we talk about in disciple making. Most of them always stick at the casual. Very rarely do we ever take it to the meaningful. And even the people we do take it meaningful with, do we ever stick our foot in the door when there's a spiritual opportunity, or do we shy away from it? And then from the spiritual, then you go to the discipling one where you then have Bible studies and things like that, discovery Bible studies. But like, how are we? If you've already built this relational equity, how are we going into it? And I'll address one more fear, then we'll turn it and share some stories to the solution. I think a lot of us just feel like we have to be have our life be perfect, or we have to know what we're doing. Let me remind you that you just have to be one step ahead of someone. You don't have to be multiple steps ahead of them. And so even if you don't feel like you're the best friend or have all these relationship issues or trust issues, that doesn't negate you from being able to discipling and being friendly and developing and going deeper in friendship. And our lives are messy, both physically, our homes, and also spiritually inside we're messy. And so don't be afraid to show them the messiness, because chances are, actually, I can almost promise you that the mess they're really dealing with, whether they admit it or not, is probably messier or just as messy as your mess. Especially it's definitely messier if they don't know Jesus. I can guarantee that. And so don't be like, I have to get my life together first, or I have to clean my house first. I would say invite them into the mess. And acknowledge the existence of the mess, but also acknowledge I don't know how far I want to take this metaphor, but also acknowledge that Jesus is the bleach of life. Right? Jesus is the supreme cleaner. So he cleans us and washes us. So
Tim, the word I hear is vulnerability. And that I think as we grow closer with Jesus and develop in our relationship with him, it gives us more security to practice vulnerability, practice that openness, to not be afraid of where we're still a work in progress or where our story has been. And that vulnerability opens up space for other people to be vulnerable to you. When we can really get honest, that's actually creates the conditions for transformation.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a story. Dave's going to share a story. Then I'll share another story. I've gotten this wrong before. We're not professional at this. There was a college student that I didn't realize till many years later really wanted me to create room for him. Kind of odd, kind of quirky. I always just thought this is who he was. And then months, if not years later, he would always text me and reach out to me. Actually, he'd Facebook message me. And then finally, he's like, I really need an internship. And I was planting a church, and I kind of was dancing around it because I really didn't want to create room for him. I didn't really think there was much of a chemistry there. Come to find out, like, he really was in a really dark and tough space, and he finally came open to me. And then finally, when he actually did show up at my house one day, he's like, I'm ready for this internship. And I kind of wasn't ready for him. And I was like, oh, you actually are coming, and kind of just create an internship for him. And I had realized that I hadn't created room for him, because he's like, yeah, I was going to call you, but I didn't have your number. You told me a long time ago that you didn't give your numbers out to college students. Sounds like, I think I only ever told that to him. I felt so bad that I was like intentionally keeping him at bay, and it ended up being a great experience. It ended up, I think, hopefully I'll be able to disciple him and showing him what he interned with us. I mean, we were trying to do pop-up parachute drop church planting, so he got a little bit of taste of everything. But I definitely had a wake-up call when he showed up at my house and was like, I don't even have your number, and I'm now living with you. And I was like, oh yeah, I really kind of left you off a couple of years ago. So that's a way I didn't do it. But David, our sniper, has a story where he created room not too long ago.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, at the tail end of the pandemic, I decided I was going to take up skateboarding as a hobby, because there's a lot of little skate parks in my area, believe it or not. And so I entered that little journey, and it was a super fun thing, a great adventure. And one of the coolest things about it was it just opened up so many opportunities for relationships. And of course, as like a pastor, it's like your dream, you get this access into this new community, this new subculture. So it was so fun delving into that. And there was this one spot I'd go to about once a week, and always meet new people there. But there's this one guy, young 20s. I'm not going to say his name because this dude's awesome. I got a great relationship with him still, and I didn't ask him permission to share this story, so I'm not going to get into personal details. But I just saw him a couple of times, and I felt that pull from the Holy Spirit to just reach out to this person, that sniper kind of moment. And so I sort of swallowed up my introverted fears and inadequacies, and just kind of started talking to him. And real quick, the door opened. And so then every time I would see him, we'd go a little further. And these neutral spaces like that are just great context. Like those third spaces that people talk about, the coffee shop spaces, the spaces that aren't inside a home and aren't inside of work. It's a third space. They're just such great spaces for talking to people. You talk about the gym, Tim, and we would just talk more. And of course, then inevitably he found out I was a pastor. And so then I was like the go-to guy whenever he'd have spiritual questions. And I would really start to like lean in and open that door and try to learn about his life. And, he became real open with me about his story, some of his challenges and struggles, where he was at. I shared my story. And pretty soon we would text and just, be texting each other throughout the week. And I was trying to, move us towards, hey, why don't we grab like wings sometimes? Why don't we grab coffee? And we kept trying, and it never quite worked out. But that connection was made. And after, I don't know, it might have been a year and a half of us really just, having a lot of fun skating together. I was skating with him one day and I found out it was his birthday. And, he's in mid-20s. It's nothing fancy. He doesn't have too many family around. He doesn't have any like plans for his birthday. And I just sensed like, dude, this is something we need to do. So I was like, why don't you come over to my house? We got dinner already planned, and then I got small group tonight. Why don't you come over to our house, have a meal, and then come to small group with me? And, so then I called my wife really quick and I'm like, can we please have this person over? Here's the story. And to her credit, she's like, let's do it. And she she was ready to make him a cake. I found out he liked pie more, so I got pie at the store. But anyway, we brought him over to our house with our crazy kids, and he got to sit around the table, and we celebrated his birthday, and then he went to small group with us. So that was a huge open door to where the relationship continues. There's a strong friendship there, and we can talk about anything.
Yeah,
you can talk about anything, awesome. and open the door to.
And you still are talking and still growing into that relationship.
Yes.
I want to just clarify for everyone else out there, being that I'm related to you. I'm pretty confident the house wasn't clean before he came. Is that a fair assessment?
100% accurate.
Okay. And when David said he invited them in, he not only lives with a wife, but 4 wonderful kids, at least 2 dogs, and his mom. So, so there was, I'm sure, a lot of chaos. And so it wasn't like they dropped everything to completely like and make it hospitable. They just said, hey, we're already doing this. Come alongside what we're doing. We want to celebrate you.
And just a little pro tip, full disclosure, I have that understanding with my wife. You know what I mean? I know what our boundaries are. I know where I can stretch us and where not to. So my obligation is to my family as well. So I had to make sure things were in the right place for that. But we both have that understanding as people who love Jesus, and our lives. It
wasn't your turn to cook dinner. And you're like, hey, by the way, you're cooking now. Yeah.
I didn't throw her into this beyond what she was ready for. Right. She knew the whole story with my friend too, and knew what an opportunity this was. So it was a burden for her to switch gears, but she knew the opportunity. We were on the same page. So you have to know about the other people in your life too.
I'm sure you've been talking to her about this young man too. So it wasn't like she was
precisely. Yeah. And I've been praying with a lot of people too. So
the funny thing is I have a very similar story, but not quite that similar, where God recently gave me the opportunity to create room in a different way. I think we just want to share these stories to show you how simple they are. It's not anything radical. So simple. And this is the kind of more of a shotgun approach that where I actually wasn't the initiator. So long story short, I typically take off Fridays. We got done strawberry picking, realized we didn't have very many wet ones left. When you have 2 kids under 3, that's a major crisis.
You gotta have the wet wipes.
You gotta have the wet ones, gotta have the wet wipes. Run to Costco. I split off, say, I'm gonna get the pizza, take 1 kid with me. She goes, great, I'm gonna get the wet ones plus a few other things. I don't know, it wasn't that much. But anyways, goes and gets a few other things. I get the pizza and I walk into the cafeteria. I was like saying, hey, I'm gonna eat a slice, right? I got it. Let's kind of just wait for the family to come and they'll eat it with me. And literally in the cafeteria, not a single spot open. Every table has at least 1 person at it. And I go, oh, okay, I guess I'll just stand here. Some guy goes, hey, come sit with me. And I was like, I'm good. It's okay. Even though I had a kid and had a pizza and some chicken bakes. He's like, no, come sit with me. It's like, why not? I looked outside. There was obviously no other place to lean up against. I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down. Long story short, he's just super friendly guy, starts talking about his family, starts talking about superheroes, start talking about movies, start talking about his kids. And I actually listened more than I asked questions. But eventually it comes down to, he has some relationship issues with his wife, and he had to move out, but he wants to move back in. They're going through counseling. They're going through therapy. He wanted to reconcile with her. Wow. And he told me that someone prayed for him recently, and he cried, and it was good because he needed it. And he's a man who prays, but he's not sure what that means. And then he told me all this stuff, about 20 minutes worth, and said, so what do you do for your job? And I was like, you don't want to know. He's like, no, you don't want to. I was like, I can't lie. I'm a pastor. He's like, oh, well, I do pray. I was like, that's not my job. Meanwhile, my wife, Sasha, comes walking in with a cart full of stuff, not completely full, right? Is expecting to find me by myself sitting with our son, and just looks, goes like, okay, I guess we're sitting with this dude, and just sits down and just starts eating and just acts like nothing's going on, joins in the conversation. And the cool thing is, at the end of the day, we got, he kept talking, I kept saying, this isn't a coincidence. You know, I'm here to encourage you. You're doing the right things. You made the right choices. You know, and I kept saying that over and over again. He was obviously in an intersection in his faith where, or in his life where he just needed someone to talk to, but he made the invitation, not me. And I just had to say, sure, why not? And before we left, we got to pray for Julio. And so it was an awesome opportunity to see that even when I'm not looking to create room in my life on my off day, right, that this guy who was hungry and hurting for some sort of relationship saw a need and tried to help me. And then on the flip side, I ended up like helping him, even though he wasn't expecting that. And it was just really neat. Like, wow. I got back in the car and I was like, honey, I promise you, I didn't go looking for this. Don't accuse me of doing ministry on my off day. She's like, no, I understand it. No, you could tell you could need it. And no, you know, it was a God thing. I was like, okay, just making sure. Cause I'm really guilty of not being David. So yeah.
And dude, I just want to highlight a pro tip that you mentioned in you said in our pre-conversation that I think probably as pastors, maybe we learn to be more sensitive to this, but anybody can become aware of this and sensitive to this, that people that are in, you know, transitional moments in their lives, crossroads in their lives, people that are going through crises and hurting in that season are so much more vulnerable and open to reaching out and whatnot. And we may not know that, but like oftentimes I think the Lord will orchestrate those opportunities either with our friendships or just strangers that we meet, that you might come alongside somebody at that strategic time where, because of their crisis, because of their time of transition, they are far more open to God, to prayer, to, you know, talking about the roots and the meaning of life, that all you have to do is to be present with them. And I think if people can recognize that, that's like a pro tip of like,
just be more present with the people, especially those who are hurting, or you might not know are hurting. So when people are going through a season, being more present with that friend and creating more room in your heart and in your home for that friend might actually be the nudge or the seed planting or the seed watering that they need to help them get to that next level. And so I encourage you to, you know, to sit and listen, and you know, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, kind of. So I mean, he at one point said something, I was like, so wait, you don't live with your wife? You don't live with your kids? He's like, oh no, that's a whole story. And I was like, okay. Quiet. And then he told me the story because I didn't say anything else. Whole bunch of stuff there, but we're getting kind of close to our normal max time. So we're going to hopefully give you some quick tips. Not that we can't go overtime. Some quick tips on ways you can do this and look at it. I'm going to give you some tips. Then David can talk a little bit about hospitality from the Bible. We've seen this already in two of our stories. Invite people to what you're normally doing. David was normally eating dinner. We were normally at Costco. We didn't do anything out of the normal. I encourage you to ask God to help create room in your heart. If you don't normally pray for someone on a weekly basis who doesn't know Jesus, that you are in at least an acquaintance or some sort of relationship with, I encourage you to find like a weekly prayer rhythm where you pray for multiple people throughout the week, to pray for God to open your heart to them and pray for opportunities. When people offer you invites, I would consider, especially people that are those who you're praying for, or those that are kind of in the outer sphere, or those that you think God wants to do something with. Don't say no immediately. You know, contemplate it. Talk to your spouse about it if you have one. But just be open to these invitations, and just be really intentional with what you have. We're not asking you for more people or more time per se, just more intentionality and deeper. And so now I'll let David unpack hospitality real quick from the Bible, and we can wrap it up.
All right, I got my Bible open right here. I think there's only two verses in the Bible in the New Testament, only two verses in the New Testament that use the word hospitality, right? So Romans 12:13 says, share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. And then Hebrews 13:2, this is a pretty famous one, you probably heard, says, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Mm-hmm. And this was a great like light bulb moment for me. Just by understanding the meaning of that word, it changed my whole understanding of what hospitality is in my home and in the church, right? So it's super simple. And once you get this, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a totally different way of looking at hospitality. That the root word, the biblical word for hospitality, okay, the Greek word, going to go fancy here for a second, but you'll get it. It's philoxenia. So that's just two words put together. Philos is a word for friend, or you might think of Philadelphia, brotherly love, friend. Xenia or xenos means stranger. So you know the word xenophobia, stranger. Philoxenia, friendship, stranger, loving the stranger. Biblically, hospitality literally means loving the stranger, loving the stranger. Now compare that to what we think of, the images we get when we think of hospitality inside the church, in our homes. We think of like entertaining people. We think of like greeting teams and welcoming teams and, you know, like kind of this well put together sort of thing.
Like production.
But biblically, loving the stranger, whoever the stranger is, just being open. Look at the way of Jesus. Look at all the time he spent just walking along the road, sharing time with his disciples, fellowshipping, having meals with people who were outsiders, insiders, strangers, friends. Such a key part of our discipleship, like you said, Tim, is those relationships. So if you can get that into your DNA as a small group, as a family, as a church, as an individual, it will change the way you live.
So we're giving you a marching order. Sometimes Kevin does this. I'm going to pull off the day. I'm not exactly sure when this video is going to debut because we're actually kind of a slightly ahead schedule, but I believe it's going to come out. I hope and believe it's going to come out before July 4th. And so here's your thing. Many of us go and do things on July 4th. You're already going to a barbecue. You're already hosting a barbecue. Go and find or pray for about a month, pray for a couple weeks. God, show me someone, give me opportunity to invite someone to go to the 4th of July party with me. Maybe they don't have family. Maybe they don't have friends. Maybe they're not going away. Maybe they're recently divorced. Or God, send someone my way to invite me to a 4th of July party I had no intention of going to, and go and work on that stranger love, that love of a stranger, right? And just I would encourage you to pray that God will open opportunity for you to either go deeper into a friendship you haven't had before or to create a new friendship. And that you to have a room in your heart. So start praying for an opportunity to invite or be invited, or start praying for the opportunity to maybe host something at your house. Start praying for that opportunity, right? That God will just create that room, that hospitality in your heart. That what do you say, philoxenia? That philoxenia will bubble up, and you can go and live it out. But I think pray for it. And I know if you ask God, who's this person I should invite who doesn't have this, that God will very clearly give you someone if you're intentional and careful to listening, and you will be surprised. And you can go ahead and comment below this video or another video how it worked out. If it went great, let us know. If it blew up, it won't. But if it does, let us know. We want to hear the stories, and we want to celebrate with you what God's doing. Can't wait to talk to you all next week. We're only have a few more weeks left through these barriers, but we're grateful for you for tuning in. If you'd like to email me and ask some questions or get coffee, go ahead and email me at tparker@oakdale.church. And we're just grateful for this time. So God bless and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.